Hello, it's me, Steady Eddie from the YouTube once again, and I'm coming with a serious video. This is serious, hot talking, we're talking serious PvP discussion. No jokes, none, no more jokes. This is a serious PvP discussion channel, and this is what we're going to do today. Last week I released a video which was basically me raging about the state of PvP and ESO. I really truly believe this is one of the worst patches for PvP in ESO. This video I'm going to go in a bit more depth about what I'm finding annoying, what I think they could change, and maybe some potential solutions to the problems with the patch. And this is also the kind of video that I have to start by saying I love ESO still. I've actually been questing a lot. I've just been playing less PvP. My solution to being less annoyed at PvP is by playing a bit less PvP than usual. I'm still hooked on it, I'm still addicted because I'm an addict. I have just been doing other stuff, PvE, doing antiquities, I've been redoing all the Alliance story quests. There's a lot to do in the game, and so me being annoyed at PvP and the state of balance in the game is not me saying I'm never going to play ESO again or whatever. But it's still something that needs to be talked about. So, what's gone wrong in PvP at the moment? Why is it shit? Why is it bad? I think a major problem with PvP right now is there is equally a lot of damage that you put out, massive numbers that we're seeing, but there's equally a lot of healing, and you have really big heals yourself, and in a group's cross healing is so strong. And the problem with this is that when you are solo or in any kind of outnumbered situation, you take the damage, the huge damage from the group that's chasing you, but when you turn around and output that damage back on them, because of their cross healing and because of how strong that is right now, they tend to take basically no damage. Because you hit your ultimate, your Dawnbreaker, whatever it is, and immediately they're back at full health. Whereas you, because you are on your own, or maybe there are 2 or 3 of you, are unable to heal at all. And this creates a couple of problems. One is that solo play right now in Cyrodiil is pretty much non-existent. There weren't many people that did it before, but now it's just painful. It's really reliant on just luck, meeting the right group. There's not really much of a skill gap in being able to 1vx. And you might say, well, Ed, you know, this game wasn't designed for solo PvP, it's an MMO, you play in a group, but it means that in group v group fights you have the same problem. Unless there's some level of organisation, there is so much cross healing that people just don't die, and a high MMRBG is just a lot of people not dying. So it's bad for those hardcore players that are really wanting to sort of pull off these seemingly impossible fights, but it's also bad for the casual player who is in a group situation sort of not getting a full experience of what PvP is like because no one's dying and no one's really taking the damage that they used to. Now, ZeniMax have done a few things such as add in sets like Plague Break, Dark Convergence, and even the CP Occult Overload, which is sort of designed to deal with this issue, to deal with now you can fight outnumbered. But the thing is that on some level these things still aren't powerful enough because groups just heal up so quickly, and even if they don't heal up, you know, the sort of things that you can do with resurrection builds with Kagranax and resurrection CP means that there's always some kind of dedicated healer running around spamming 2-second resurrections on people. But also that lowers the skill floor significantly, and this is another problem with the patch because of things like Oaken Soul Ring and changes that have been made over time, and because the healing is so high, you are very forgiven for your mistakes right now. If you make a mistake, you can generally heal yourself and get back up to full health. And also because of sets like Oaken Soul Ring, it is way easier now to get to a competitive level. Now this is good and bad, and I think there will just be ongoing discussion about this forever. But this is my opinion. Something like the Oaken Soul Ring doesn't have much effect in PvE, because in PvE, no matter what, the person who's best at doing DPS, who's nailed their rotation and has nailed everything about doing a DPS rotation, including knowing the mechanics of the trial they're on, etc, they will always be better than someone who's using Oaken Soul. All Oaken Soul will do in a PvE setting is allow more people to get into it, to allow more people to finish their Maelstrom run, to get enough DPS to be able to be invited to trials. They won't be the top dog until they actually make the leaps and strides to do the thing that the people who have spent thousands of hours on the game have done. And because it's not a player versus player environment, because they're not competing directly against each other head on, it doesn't really matter. Unless there's some level of gatekeeping where you're really annoyed that you spent all this time getting your Maelstrom Arena achievement and then someone else can do it just because of the Oaken Soul ring. It's just an achievement. It's not that big of a deal, to be honest. In my opinion, and this is just really opinionated, you know, at the end of the day, it's just an achievement in a video game. And I think more people being able to get into the PvE side of things, being able to get into the end game, which has suffered recently, is good. But the problem with it in PvP, the Oaken Soul ring in PvP, is that you are fighting head on the people with Oaken Soul or without Oaken Soul. And the people, the equivalent of the endgame trialers who have been doing it for ages and have perfected their rotations, the equivalent of that in PvP, someone who's really skilled, who's really powerful and really good, and has nailed everything in their class, from being able to know what kind of damage combo they need to pull off, knowing when to attack, when to defend, absolutely nailing every single animation cancel that they can possibly do flawlessly to speed up their gameplay, to do everything perfectly, is thousands of hours on this game. It takes someone to do that. And now someone is getting to nearly that level with the Oaken Soul ring. And so the people who have spent all this time and all this effort trying to get this good are now fighting people who feel only not that much worse because of the sets and the things that are in the game that make them that good. Because the skill floor is so low, they're able to get to a level with not much effort that is only a little bit behind the top players in the game. And that feels like a bit of a slap in the face for the people that have spent that time to get that good. I'm not even one of those people, you know, I have 3,000 hours in the game. There are people who have spent like 7,000, 8,000, 10,000 plus hours in the game, perfecting their PvP game, and it feels like a slap in the face for them. It's the people that are most dedicated to the game and most dedicated to getting good at the game and have potentially spent almost the most money in the game over the years, who have been there since beta, playing it night after night, perfecting their gameplay, who are getting slapped in the face because now, if they're fighting 4 or 5 people, in the past they might have been able to do this easily, but now every single person is at a level which isn't that far behind theirs, despite having way less hours, way less time and way less training. Now, you might not necessarily see this as a problem because it means there's more people that are able to get into PvP. But the problem I have with it lies here. Anyone who's a fan of MMOs is probably also a fan of Josh Strife Hayes, which is he's an MMO YouTuber, and if you don't know him, check him out. He recently released a video which was about why are people so nostalgic about older MMOs. There's lots of people who played older MMOs that are convinced that older MMOs were better. The too long don't read of that whole video is that there was a lot more adversity and challenge in earlier MMOs. You didn't have the group finders, you didn't have the add-ons, you didn't have the DPS tips, the easier farming mechanisms. Everything was a struggle, everything was difficult. And what it meant is that you built up relationships, you had to go around to zones to get groups, you had to do the difficult things to be the best in the game. And it took time and it was a challenge. But after it, you would have those memories with those people that you did it with. You finally beat that boss, you finally did that thing, you finally got that group to do the thing, and it was a struggle at the time, but then you made it. And those become really treasured memories. And it's the same with anything. It's why games like Dark Souls and the Elden Ring series are so popular, because it's such a struggle and such a process, and it might take you hundreds of times to beat a boss. But once you do it, you have that sense of accomplishment and that sense of challenge that's been defeated, and it creates that memory. You remember the first time you beat each boss. And so cycling back to ESO, I remember being bad at ESO. I remember the challenge and the adversity that I went through to get better at ESO. I remember the very first time I even killed someone on my own in Cyrodiil. I remember it vividly because it was so difficult, and it was the first time that I ever did it all on my own. And these memories are important. I remember everyone I played with. I remember the relationships I formed. I remember the very first person who taught me how to do basic rotations in the game, who taught me what kind of gear I should run and the basic sort of rules about the game. But now with something like Oaken Soul in the game, in PvP, you aren't going to have that journey as much. You aren't going to have that sense of adversity. Yes, when you first join, you're always going to be just absolutely dreadful. But once you get a minor sense of what things do, you're going to be able to easily kill people. You're going to be able to easily access being decent in PvP, even against good players. And in the short term, that might be nice. It might be good. It might be good for people to get into it. But in the long term, are these memories going to be created? Are the memories of having this struggle, learning things, killing someone good for the first time, are those memories still going to be made? Because I'm not so sure. I'm worried that it's turned so much into a theme park MMO that there is no adversity or challenge left, and that these memories won't be made because you won't have to reach out to find someone to help you to do the things in the game that create those memories. ESO is about memories. I think there can be ways to channel people into the end game without lowering the skill floor to an extent that it feels like a slap in the face to the people that have spent the time trying to get really good at the game. Final Fantasy XIV is an MMO I've played recently, and they kind of incorporate dungeons into the story. They incorporate the dungeons and the trials and learning rotations into the whole experience of the game, and it means that no matter what, you end up at doing the end game. You end up doing the hard things, and you learn how to do it on the way. It's very good at teaching you how to do that. I wonder if there's a way to incorporate that into ESO to change how the stories work maybe, or to change how the leveling up system works, to get people into PvE and to get people into endgame PvP. I think in many ways the community itself does a good job of this. There's so many beginner guides to PvP and PvE, beginner builds all over YouTube, and there's loads of guilds in game that are about getting people into the game, getting people into PvP and PvE. So the community does do a good job, but I think maybe ZeniMax could make some changes so that it was easier from an in-game perspective without having to lower the skill floor in the way that they are doing. Keep the skill gap in gameplay, but change the mechanisms and the structures in the game that to channel more people into endgame PvE and PvP. That would be the perfect solution for everyone. Accessible, but not a slap in the face to the endgame players. So that sounds like it should be the end of the video, but there's one more thing that I want to say, which is that all of this has made PvP boring. It's made PvP boring because you feel hard done by, because when I know I've done something good, and when I know I've played well, and I've timed my perfect ultimate, and drained the enemy's resources a bit, and done everything right, I still can't finish off the fights, because their mistakes aren't being punished. I don't feel like when I play well, I'm being rewarded for what I'm doing, because of the amount of healing, because of how many mistakes are forgiven. And it's similar in a way to the proc meta during Markarth, and the reason being is because in the proc meta, you kind of felt the same way after you died. The proc meta in Markarth basically meant that you could use one or two skills and create huge amounts of damage because of the proc sets you were wearing. And what it meant is that in fights, people who were previously not very good at outputting damage or very good in general now had huge amounts of damage no matter what if they wore certain sets. And you always felt hard done by when you died because you didn't feel like they were playing well. You just felt like they had huge damage because of the sets they were wearing. And this patch kind of feels the same. When I die, most of the time I don't feel like I've had a good fight. I don't feel like I've kind of messed up and then died, or maybe I'm just too outnumbered and there's no way I'm gonna do it. Almost every time I die right now, I feel like I've been hard done by in some way. I don't feel like I've seen out a fight and I've played well and done my best and then died because they're better than me or the group is just too big to handle. And I actually went to PvP for about 2 or 3 hours last night and I counted my deaths. I died 7 times. 4 of those were Oaken Soul gankers. Either on their own or in the middle of a big group, they just come and gank me even though there's loads of people on me. 2 of them were Oaken Soul DKs in the middle of a group, hitting me for 15k molten whips. There's not much counterplay to that when they're in a group because you can't just permanently block just in case they hit their molten whip, and it's hard to see what they're doing when they're in the middle of a group. And I only died once where I really just felt like I'd been sort of truly outplayed, where I didn't play well enough, I was a little bit outnumbered, and I just died. And I was like, fine, that was a fair fight, and there was no one with Oaken Soul, there was no one trying to gank me. It was just a fair fight and I died. And I think that's frustrating, and I think that says it all. And there will definitely be someone that comments saying, you're just salty because you died. And to that I say, yes, but also for legitimate reasons. Because I think it's unfair when over half the times I died were due to someone using the new set with uncounterable damage, especially when they're within a group. And it's over half the deaths. And it just becomes not fun at that point. If it was 1 or 2 times every so often that I got ganked, I would be fine. But it's not. It's half the time I'm in Cyrodiil, I'm being ganked. And I'm fed up of it. And so maybe they can do something with Oaken Soul. Maybe they can either make it not work in PvP, but take out the things that make it OP in PvP, which are mainly Major Force for the gankers and Major Heroism for the DKs. That's me done, Steady Eddie. See you later. See you in the next video. Bye. Like and subscribe, please. Please, I need you to like and subscribe, please. I'm begging you. I'm begging you.